It is so tough to tap into yourself on cue.
Be authentic. Yes.
Welcome to the Signal Room. I am Jemma Brown, GM of the Signal Awards. And today on the show, we are talking about the industry's new favorite buzzword, which is authenticity. But my question is, can a host stay true to themselves and their voice and their experiences as a show grows and as their, call it, self as IP grows with it? So to dig into this question, we've brought three people into the Signal Room who have managed such a balancing act week after week, episode after episode. We have Anna Sale, the host of Death, Sex, and Money.
Hello.
We have Anna Martin, the host of Modern Love.
Hi.
And Callum Johnson, the host of the Callum Johnson Show. Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Hey, how's it going?
I always get curious about when a word becomes marketing's new darling, because it really raises the question of what does this say about our business and what does this say about our culture? Beyond the semantics, authenticity is the key to our creative survival as a medium and to its credibility, because podcast hosts are beloved for their authenticity. So first question is for Anna Sale. You have been making Death, Sex, and Money for 12 years. I actually have a note from my producer, 840 episodes.
It's incredible.
What are some of the ways that you retain your authenticity on mic, episode after episode?
Authenticity. I think I agree with you that when you don't have it, it is a killer. So I agree with the premise. I do not approach the mic with like authenticity time, baby. Like what I do approach it with is, and this goes back to the very early days when I was making the transition from a newsroom reporter to a podcast host. Our pilot executive producer, Emily Botine, who's still at WNYC, she's so good at helping you discover new ways of using your voice as a maker. And she made me stand in a studio with all the tracking that I had written. And she stood across the room from me when I was doing my first tracking. And she would just make me like lower my shoulders, move my arms, and just deliver it that way. And it was always, and she just made me retake it until it really sounded like I was talking to her and not at her.
Was it just like a get into your body exercise? Or...
It's get into your body and get into who you are. Because it's when you first are figuring out how to be a host of a show, you can get in your head. And so for me, it really helped me remember, like as soon as I hit record, I'm talking to one person who might just be meeting me or has known me for a long time. And I try to approach them the same way I do, you know, when I'm talking to a kid at elementary school drop off who's a little intimidated, or at a dinner party, like, hey, that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, like that's my way of doing it, but that's my personality. So other people have totally different ways of demonstrating their authenticity.
This was actually absolutely one of my questions for later down in the conversation. I'm curious if anyone else wants to jump in on it, but like, how did you develop your on mic authenticity, or what do you do in order to tap in to get there?
I mean, I'm just thinking I just did tracking before this this chat we're having. And a thing that my producers say a lot is like, pretend we're in a bar, which is shorthand for exactly sort of, I think, what you're talking about, Anna. And it's tough just because, you know, we'll do it again and again, and they'll say the sort of root of their comments are like, you're not sounding like yourself. And in the hardest moments of tracking, it's like, well, I am myself. So how do I sound more like myself? And I guess the first thing I'm saying on this podcast is quite negative, but I'll turn it around. It's like, what really helps is abandoning the script for me, really like internalizing my tracking and then not looking at the page as much. Another thing that helps is just like you're saying, Anna, actually making eye contact with the real person. That's really helpful. I stand up. I mean, I don't think I'm the only person to do that, but that was actually kind of an unlock for me a year ago. But I feel like this is still something I'm very much working on, um, because it is so tough to tap into yourself on cue.
Be authentic. Yes.
Yeah, I know. And then I think we need to switch it up because it's like the way I'm talking in a bar, I don't want to put that down, the New York Times feed. So anyway, but it's that is just like get loose, get comfortable, but being told to get loose and get comfortable is a surefire way to maybe not get loose and get comfortable. Anyway, so it's tough.
Yeah, and just one thing that I would add, because I think Anna got it exactly correct. I guess you're both called
Which
Anna,
Anna?
actually.
Just
Yeah,
both of us.
Yeah.
both of you, both of
Both
you.
Annas.
But like it's a work in progress. I think it's something that you're definitely not perfect at on the first episode. It kind of happens through the reps, and I think for
Mhm.
me, because we have the Callum Johnson Show is like an interview show, like I interview entrepreneurs. And so I think the biggest unlock for me was just getting in a flow state. And the way that that happened was having this mindset of being in service to my guest. Because I think so
Mm.
many times as like hosts and interviewers, we think about ourselves and like, how do we sound? And, do we have the right questions and is everything ready? But I think when I kind of changed my mindset and I went to like, how do I make the guest comfortable? It's like I'm the ultimate point guard. I'm like, ultimately I'm giving assists. And so how do I get them comfortable? How do we get them off to a good start? And then through that, you get in a flow state yourself. And then I think the authenticity piece and just being yourself and natural just happens organically. But like I say, we've done over 200 episodes, so that happens like over the reps of just doing it. By the way, the fact that you've done 800
I
episodes is
know, it's
like,
remarkable.
840.
I know.
Yeah,
We've been at this a
it's
long, long
it's
time. I'm
incredible.
authentically old. Um, uh,
Sorry.
one other thing that I just want to bring in is I think that
Please.
being authentic in an interview that's audio, which is how I made most of those 800 episodes, and being authentic when you are looking at yourself on camera is a totally different exercise. Being authentic when you are looking at your phone making a social media video is like a whole other exercise. Like I think that there's different parts of our personas that get called upon depend as the medium shifts.
Yeah.
And that part is also takes reps because the way that I greet a guest when we're starting an audio interview is different than the way I greet an Instagram viewer. Like I gotta bring the pop, to get somebody to stop the scroll. And for me, that's been the part that's where I feel like I'm still figuring out how not to feel like I'm imitating somebody who's comfortable making a selfie video.
Mm.
that's 100% correct. I think one thing that's been huge for me is like just having a central intention behind everything I do. Like, why am I recording this?
Uh-huh.
I think especially once you start to get an audience and like viewership, it's easy to just start like chasing virality or chasing downloads or chasing views. And you start inviting people on or having conversations that's like, why are we doing this? Actually, I heard Oprah talk about that in an interview. It was like she doesn't record it unless there is a strong case of like why we're going to do this.
Is that a singular why for the show or a why for each episode and each topic?
I think both. I think that you have like the mission, like the umbrella mission of like why you're doing this whole thing. But then I think from recording to episode, interview to interview, there should be a why, there should be an intention. And sometimes it's really pure, sometimes it's just pure curiosity. But at least that's like clear from the upfront.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in and say my why for this episode, which I think is pure curiosity, but it is kind of that meta exercise of I've been behind the glass wall, so to speak. And making this show, I was suddenly like, how do I show up as a host? Who am I actually on camera? Doing some of that interrogation and then thinking about like the self as IP and how inherently uncomfortable that idea is and like what is interesting in that discomfort. And I think of the three of you as incredible performers, incredible journalists, and also people who, when I watch their performance, it doesn't feel performative. And so I wanted to understand how you do it.
I think for many years as an interviewer, I thought of my role as like a conduit, as Callum was saying. Like, I want to pull out people, I want to know people more closely. And that's, and when I'm making an argument, it's going to be by a question I make that makes somebody answer, make something, somebody thinks about something in a different way than they've been presenting. And I think being kind of making those, just kind of saying to listener, this is why we're doing this, it made me step into my confidence more as a convener and as somebody who was trying to contribute something particular into our cultural conversation. And I think that really helped me just be more fully all the parts of myself, as a host and as a maker and with my team. There was a lot of years where I'm from West Virginia. I care about rural communities. I didn't know how that fit into a show that was produced out of New York City called Death, Sex, and Money. I felt like I had to leave part of that outside because it didn't seem hip. And now I'm like, I don't care. That's who I am. This is interesting, you all. Here's why.
Yeah.
So I think that was an important just process piece. And I think I feel more, it's made me less afraid with my listeners because I feel like I'm more upfront about who I am and my point of view.
I know for me personally, but a lot of people that have interview shows, at least in the beginning, why it felt more comfortable asking questions rather than just doing like a solo show or whatever is I kind of had this limiting belief, this fundamental limiting belief that those people's stories were more interesting than my own. Like I think that we kind of put the focus on other people's opinions, stories, as we're like trying to build that confidence within ourselves. But I think you get to a certain point just in just like mastering the craft and just getting better with every episode where you're like, I actually really have a point of view. And like the audience want to hear it. Like the audience start imploring you to like give more of that. And so naturally you just start stepping into that more.
I want to stay with that idea. So we're talking, I think, top half of this conversation about being authentic within the context of an actual recording, but zooming out, I think what you're getting to, Calum, is this evolution of the person, or the persona or the brand of the show itself, and then how does that rub up against who you are, and how do you manage that tension?
Yeah. 100%.
Everyone give a good public radio.
Well, the thing that made me think, Jemma, is like, Anna Martin it's not just self as IP. She works for the most famous journalistic organization on planet Earth. And so she's also representing an institution. So that brings up a whole other dimension of authenticity and what you're representing at the mic.
Yes, thank you, Anna Sale. I love being able to say that. Yeah. And I'm like genuinely thinking about this. I'm not nervous to speak on this. It's something I think about all the time. I mean, I'm relatively new to hosting. I've done it now for 3 years. Many fewer episodes than Anna and certainly than Calum. And yeah, as I've come into a much more active host role, I've had to grapple still with this idea that I still don't think that our show is host driven, quote unquote. It's not
Really?
do you think it is? I mean,
Who else is driving? It is.
Well, I guess maybe more so what I mean is I do still want to be a stand-in for the listener, a curious listener. I was going to say the word ambassador, but that feels like a bit passive. I think really critically about when to bring in my own experience, and I do it quite sparingly.
Okay.
I think there's like a knee-jerk reaction, at least that I have in my personal life. If a friend comes to me with a problem, I'd be like, well, that's similar to my breakup. And I also had a strange rash. And let me tell you about, whatever, like to bring in your own experience to sort of as an answer or response to their question. But that can be an impulse that I think detracts from, in an interview format. I think it could become a crutch. So anyway, I think about bringing myself in sparingly when I have something to say in a way that can move the unspooling of their story forward. And in this way, I guess, I mean, it's not host driven in the sense of I mean, I am asking the questions and certainly I have a point of view, but I still don't think of myself as like, it's not the Anna Martin show, it's the Modern Love show. Here, this is like, to me, I still am spotlighting another person's story while being a curious listener who sometimes brings herself in when it can advance the conversation.
You're making me realize, Anna, that it's not just the New York Times you represent. Like, people have very deep and intimate and long-standing relationships with the Modern Love column. Like, we have all fallen in love and had heartbreak alongside reading that column on Sundays. So yes, you are carrying that torch as well as a host.
Yeah, and I must shout out the founder and editor of the Modern Love column, Daniel Jones. It's been around for now 21 years, I'm pretty sure. So a very long-standing institution in its own right at the Times. But I guess just speaking about, I talked about how the show has changed somewhat. I think that expanding, we've tried to bring our listeners along for these format changes, and we have. I don't know if we could speak to this, like the sort of authenticity while changing. Like it's trying to maintain the sort of heart of the brand or the show or of me as a host while the types of conversations we're having are changing in very significant ways. So that's been interesting to navigate as well.
This podcast is brought to you by Wistia. Wistia is a video marketing platform that makes it easy to add video to your workflow. And in fact, I'm using it right now to record this very mid-roll. Wistia is the engine under the hood of this podcast. You can adapt videos and podcast episodes for every channel with Wistia's built-in creation and editing tools like AI social clipping that automatically recommends the best moments to share out on social. Everything works together in one place, so you can use fewer tools and focus on what you do best, which is creating. Get started at wistia.com/signalroom. I'm curious, you said this isn't the Anna Martin show, but for Callum, your show is literally called the Callum Johnson Show.
All love, yeah.
I'm just like, how do you balance the Callum on mic, the Callum off mic? Are they the same person? Are they different people? Do you perform as Callum when you're in studio?
I definitely think it is a balance. Honestly, when you right in the beginning, Gemma, when you mentioned like performing and like not wanting to seem like you're performing, my first thought is like, and I don't want to speak for both Annas, but in a way we are performing, because you want to be captivating to an audience. And I think most people, when they're just in like regular conversation, aren't super captivating with their delivery, but it is still you.
Do you like think about your first 30 seconds and how to like hook the listener?
Not quite now. But it is something I have had friends even come to me sometimes and they'll be like, oh, I feel like I'm in one of your interviews sometimes when you speak. I think as an interviewer, you always develop your own style, right? And like your cadence and the way that you speak. And part of that is performative. And actually, something I've been thinking about a lot recently with everything happening with AI is there's going to be so much content on the internet. It's already happening where we're not sure if it's real. Like we're not sure if a human created this. And so I think as just like people, society, like macro, we're going to develop such a filter for what feels authentic. Like the host actually felt this. And a part of like human authenticity is vulnerability, is relatability, and is things going wrong. Like this is verifiably human.
I think it also presents challenges for us as makers and as people who are participating in business, because we may have a very deep and authentic relationship to a listener with what we make, and then goes to an ad break, and here I am voicing an ad. And I think that we have to like really be aware that how we present, not just on the show, but how we are perceived to be engaging in commerce and capitalism. Like it's all part of the thing, because if they think that you're pulling a fast one on them, it betrays that trust. And that's everything you have.
Have you heard from listeners, Anna, who say something to that effect?
It takes anybody who lives on the internet sometimes knows what this is, which is like sometimes it's like, okay, I can hear that. I hear that this is feedback that this is might have been something I hadn't thought of, and I'll interact. Other times you have to be like that person who's shouting at me from across the internet. Like, how would I respond if it was somebody shouting at me on a sidewalk when I was walking by? Like, how would I take that feedback? Um, we are accountable to our audiences, and we just have to figure out um, how to live in that. And the thing that it just means continually coming back, not just in like the choices you make editorially, but how you do your work, how you present in public and in private. Like, am I living with integrity? Because again, people can hear it and they can see it when you're like, kind of like, maybe I get it, like we all
Yes.
know, like, oh, they did that weird ad campaign. I'm surprised that they must have like needed to get, a chunk of money like that. We're all judging as content consumers. So I think as makers, we just have to think through that.
Callum, you brought AI into the conversation a beat ago, and it's not on my mind as we're thinking about this word authenticity, which is maybe in some ways the antidote to AI. Authenticity feels like the new version of storytelling or community. It's like what we're reaching for when we are in this sort of battle with other than human forces. Though I also know that AI helps with workflows and with productivity, and it's a tool. And I guess my question for you is, how do you think about AI in the process of making your show or push back against it to preserve that authenticity piece?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think AI right now, in terms of like the Callum Johnson Show and how we use it a lot behind the scenes, whether that's like helping with strategy, whether that's like drafting transcripts of episodes that we can then use in post. Um, and I think that another powerful lever of AI is just like helping you scale your content. A lot of creators are using it to like repurpose, whether that's reels or clips. I think really where it's going to start becoming interesting, and it's already happening, is when AI goes from being behind the scenes, like it goes from being operational to actually being the talent, like it's actually the influencer is AI. So I think that whenever something like that happens, because that's going to happen, it's already happening, is you're going to see a shift the other way, which is like people and audiences looking for things that are verifiably human. And we're already seeing that phenomenon with like in real life experiences and how those are taking off. I think for the last few years, and really since influencer and content creator has become popular terms, we've looked at creators to be like perfect in many ways, like as this perfect ideal of what we have in our minds. And the second that they act out of alignment with that, it's like they're attacked. Um, I hope that we reach a place where that's actually not the case. Like if we're looking for human content, like verifiably human content, then that also includes like people make mistakes, or
Mhm.
their art is great, but they have an opinion that we don't agree with, and that's fine. So I don't know, maybe I'm being idealistic. I am an optimist. But yeah, I think that that's kind of that's how we use it, but it's also how I think things are going to transition just in the space, in the macro.
I'm almost imagining like a USDA organic sticker or like a kosher sticker on content now, like authentically human. Ooh.
Yeah.
Um, before we wrap out, final thoughts, musings, words of wisdom.
One thing I would say is the move in our part of podcasting away from sort of hyper produced, narrative produced storytelling, where it's very acts and tracks, as they say in the biz.
Throw it
Uh,
down.
I think moving away from that into, because of the realities of the economics of podcasting, and also I think the tastes of audience.
Mhm.
I think moving towards more a live to tape conversation, where you hear a host fumble to find just the right way they want to say the thing. Or for me, I still say like when I'm trying to get a thought out. I just can't excise it from my vocabulary. I actually think it adds to the authenticity and my buy-in as a listener when just to feel like, oh, there wasn't somebody deep in the tape kind of cutting around to make the host look a certain way and the guests look a certain way and to create an emotional moment that hit a high right when it was scored in such a way. Like, I want to feel like I'm hanging out, even with my really talented and craft oriented audio makers. It's interesting. My tastes have changed where something that I would have really loved in the 2010s, because it was the kind of, height of that really intricate audio making time. And there was so much of it. And it was a wonderful time. But I want to hang out with my podcasting friends. What I choose to listen is like a hang. Um, and I think that's part of this conversation of feeling like I'm in relationship and experiencing something along with the host and their guest, or whatever the format of the podcast is.
There's this quote from Jake Shane, who makes this podcast called Therapist. That was I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's like, a great podcast should feel like a FaceTime call.
That's nice.
Which, it's a great of a certain kind of podcast. I think that's kind of what you're reaching for.
One thing for me is I was always worried, like, what about the signposts? What about the chronology? You know what I mean? Like, how will the listener be able to follow us? And editors, producers encouraged me to have more trust in listeners, understanding that, you can follow a conversation if someone starts here and then they're like, well, I got to tell you a little bit about my mom. And let's go back now to you can follow these sort of whatever little streams and you can find your way back to the river. That's a cool, metaphor I've never used before, but it's like trusting that people can stay with you, that they're engaged, that it's not even willing to do a little more work. It's just, I trust them. I trust that they're along for the ride. I trust they can follow.
Trusting the listener, I actually wrote that down in my notes. That's something like I wanna think about more.
I've been wondering if you were taking notes. I've been watching a note-taking phase.
Yeah, I wrote that one down. I started the show in 2022 and I was saying it all the time. I want to be authentic and all of this stuff. I think really as the show got going, because we had a very clear shift in terms of like our numbers, I started thinking about relatability way more than authenticity. And the way that I like define relatability is that someone can see themselves in your story and in your message. And so I think that we're getting to a place where like there's going to be so much content in the world, like there already is, where it's really about like, who do I like? Like who is my person? Who is my girl? Who is my guy? And I think that the way that as humans, like we like people that are similar to the way that we are, like they have similar traits or the way they speak is similar, or um and so I think being yourself fully, unapologetically, which I guess is authenticity, is how your tribe, is how your people find you, is how you build relatability. So I think that's more my thing than purely authenticity. I think authenticity is part of it, but really for me, it's relatability. I think the people that win are going to be the people that are just the most relatable.
I'm learning a lot. I'm grateful for this conversation. Gemma, thank
Thank
you.
you for bringing your very relatable selves authentically to this recording.
A pleasure.
This
Yeah, this was
is verified human content beaming
It's
to you
true.
live.
They're stickers.
Appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.